was reading it along, like yelled at me at the end and was like, "You got to end the book. There's no ending here." So the book that you guys read has a much more extensive ending than what was originally in the Globe. But I've always seen this as a series of books, and I'm deep into the writing of book 2 right now, which will come out next year. So the plan is that you follow these characters. It's not there's no pat ending yet because this is a mystery that scales a few books. You've also noticed like I haven't gotten deeply into who the bad guys are, the family. There's some hints, but I'm purposefully holding back some information as I develop the story. So I do think that there's got to be a little bit of a cliffhanger, but I tried to extend it enough that you got a feel for where I was going with it. But it wasn't the solution that I think it's not a standalone work, I guess, is what I'm saying. It continues. I want it to be satisfying enough, but still not satisfying.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I kept thinking like my Kindle was telling me I'm at like 85% of the way through the book, and I'm like, it can't end yet. Like it just can't be over at this point.
It can never end. Yeah. No, I had a blast writing it, and now we can talk about stuff like the Liberty Bell stuff. To me, it's just so cool. I don't know if you've delved into the history of the Liberty Bell at all, and I gave a lot of it in the end of the book. But it is a kind of a strange history, which we're going to get into a little bit more in book 2 because there's more about it that is pretty bizarre. But it was a bell that didn't sound right. That there were multiple bells, that was made. And its first ringing had nothing to do with liberty. It was the coronation of the King of England. So there's so much around it that I think is very intriguing. And in the next book, we go into Philadelphia more, which is trickier for me because I have lived in Philly. When I was in college, my parents lived in Philly for 5 years. So I actually did live in Philadelphia for 5 years, but it was a long time ago. So it's trickier for me to research Philly. But book 2, it starts in Boston, goes into Philly, and actually ends up going to London and New York. So it's a little bit more international. I'm going to expand where we go with these characters. But all the main characters are going to travel along to the next book, the ones that are still alive, and continue through into book 2. Yeah.
Awesome. And if anybody ever wants to jump in and ask a question, I have a bunch that I can continue to ask Ben, but feel free. You're all live, in this conversation as well. So feel free to pop in. But Ben, I don't know if you saw, but we did have a pretty big cheesesteak discourse in Discord the other day. So there are a bunch of Philly folks.
Oh, I need to reach out to some of the Philly folks and get some help with some research, actually. So yeah, I got to go back on the Discord and look through who is from Philly because it's during a pandemic. It's much trickier to research because I'm not getting on planes as much as I used to. And normally, if I was writing a book like this, I would go to Philly every week for on the cheesecake conversation.
And so I guess, going back to the book a little bit and, this being a fiction book versus some of your nonfiction is, I guess, how do you approach wrapping up a book differently, than you typically would with, Bitcoin Billionaires bringing down the house compared to something like this where you are trying to leave people with a cliffhanger?
Yeah, I mean, it's different in that, well, it's not that different. In real stories, you have to kind of choose an ending too, right? I mean, you have to kind of figure out what's the natural ending to this story. If you look at Bitcoin Billionaires, there's lots of places that story, I mean, that story hasn't ended yet. One of the biggest, critiques of Antisocial Network has always been the GameStop story is not over yet. And as, these last 2 days show you and that it's absolutely not over. Kim, I see you. Kim, do you still have your GameStop? Yeah. I think you're muted.
Yes, I am like all in more than I ever was before.
I don't know if I'm allowed to tell people. I'm allowed to tell people who you are, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So for those of you who read The Antisocial Network, Kim is one of the main characters in the book. Actually, she is my favorite character in the book. Who I hope we get a really great actress to play. I think it's a very someone that you want to win. So I want your GameStop to do really, really well. And yeah, I mean, it's been crazy. I feel like, the movement is continuing, and whether it's really still a short squeeze or whether it's just new value being added to the company, the future looks really good for GameStop right now.
They just did a stock split today too, I think.
Exactly. It's pretty spectacular. So you really want to see people who held this long succeed and win here. So I hope you do. I hope you make a fortune. That's awesome. So very cool. But yeah.
And kind of off the final scenes that we'd gone through is you'd done a lot of work on the U.S. Constitution. I think you'd even gone into a couple of different wives' tales related to that ship.
I love the Constitution. So I actually made friends with the head of the USS Constitution Museum, and I even got to talk to the captain, the current captain of the USS Constitution, who is a real Navy guy. I'm not sure what rank he is, but he's pretty high up in the Navy. So a lot of that information is real. We are going to do an event. I don't know if we have it planned yet, but in the summer at the USS Constitution around the book. I am doing the Paul Revere House. If anybody is in Boston, I should get the link to you, Drew, so we can get it up on the Discord. But on April 18th, which is the actual anniversary of Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, I'm going to be doing a live event at the at the Paul Revere House. I think signing books, and it should be a blast. So if anybody's near Boston, that should be a good time. But yeah, the Constitution is so cool. I don't know if any of you have been there. If you have kids, absolutely bring them there in the summer, because you can walk around the boat, you can go inside, and it's an actual working tall ship from the era that was the greatest ship in the Navy at the time, and they still sail it, and they have a bunch of sailors who live on it and work on it, and it's pretty incredible as like living museums go.
Awesome. And then again with the spoiler, and I guess as far as for me, like, what's our timeline for Midnight Ride 2? I know you're actively writing that, but so when is that actually supposed to come out?
So the book, I don't know that we have a specific pub date. I'm supposed to hand it in May 15th, but I'm going to miss that deadline enormously. I'm just going slow. I've got the whole thing planned out. I actually pitched it all to my editor yesterday, who loved what I'm doing with it. It's somewhat ambitious in terms of the plot line. So it's a very big plot line. I don't know if I should give some hints away. I'll probably give some hints away, but so my guess is, so the hardcover just came out. So our paperback, I believe, is slated for fall. We could look that up on Amazon, maybe September. Is that right? I should look it up on Amazon. But and then the hardcover would come out a year from the original hardcover. So this one just came out in February. So probably next February the book would come out. I'm gonna see if I can get pre-copies for us, for the Discord, for the people who are in the Ben Mezrich project, because I usually get a bunch of advance copies, and they come usually 3 or 4 months before the book. So that would be end of this year. That's if I hand the book in a reasonable amount of time. I'm not going to miss by too much. I'm usually right on time, but I'll tell you, this last year, I've just kind of fallen off the wagon of getting everything in. I'm sure all of you feel the same way, but like, time doesn't work the same anymore. It's very hard to get anything done. And it seems like it should be easier because we're all sitting at home most of the time, or I mean, I was for a long time, but for whatever reason, it's just the motivation level isn't where it was when you're running around doing stuff. So I'm going to try and get the book in June. So I would think this fall I can have some pre-copies available for people, so people can, get it first here. Yeah, that's my plan.
And I guess kind of you mentioned having the full overview of what you're expecting for a Midnight Ride 2. I guess what goes into you pre-planning something like that? Like you clearly knew where you were going.
You kind of know that it's going to involve Ben Franklin, right, and his experiment with the key. Playing with the title. This is secret for now, but the title we're playing with is The Mistress and the Key. I don't know if that's too long a title or not thriller-esque enough, but it revolves around Ben Franklin and his scientific work with electricity, which is really interesting if you look back. Electricity is bizarre. Going back to the history of how we discovered it, there's a lot more about electric eels than you would think, which was involved in how we actually discovered electricity. And then Ben Franklin, at the time of the revolution, electricity was like a parlor trick. It was like magicians used it, and nobody else. It didn't seem to have any use. It was something like people would do, you know, to pull pranks on people, basically. And it was all static electricity. And the only thing that existed beyond static electricity was lightning. But nobody made the association. They thought they were two absolutely different things. And it was Ben Franklin who kind of figured out that they were not two different things. And so it kind of starts from there. But I do get into some really cool, you know, revolutionary era stuff. Ben Franklin was one of the most complicated people in our history. And some of you might know there was a big documentary recently on him, but some of you might have read about him. But he had a really bizarre life. He was the first real celebrity, American celebrity. He was super famous. He had many mistresses. He lived this kind of crazy, debauched life all over the world, and was obviously a genius, but was a scientist and an alchemist. And so he was also linked to some very weird religious groups. So there's going to be a lot of stuff in this book that will be new to some people, will be, you know, some conspiracy stuff that, you know, may or may not be entirely true, which I like to delve into. But, you know, so that's one element of the story. And the other element of the story is, well, I don't want to give that away. I'm going to give that all away. But it's following, you know, it's following this mystery to another place. And so Haley and Nick are gonna be, you know, the main characters again. Adrian has a pretty big role, and then I'm introducing a couple new characters. One in the family. I'm gonna get deeper into who the family is, and then one sort of professorial, sort of someone for Adrian to be, you know, competing with, I guess is the way to describe it. So yeah, that's the plan. That's where we're going with that. It's been really cool. You know, the reception has been really positive. It's tough selling a book in the middle of a war and a pandemic. The timing of the Ukraine situation was not ideal for my book launch. So I did get bumped from a lot of shows. I've been in talks with Good Morning America to try and do something around the Paul Revere House launch, so around the anniversary of the Midnight Ride. GMA was supposed to have me on with the book launch, and then the Ukraine thing bumped me. And this is something that authors, you go through this a lot in your careers. You know, I had a book in the 90s about to come out right when the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing happened. Like literally the week. And I was booked on everything. And I got bumped for the stupidest reason. You know, I mean, it was like, because Bill couldn't keep it in his pants, I was bumped from every show on television. And it was the worst week of my career, early in my career. So you can't control things. At least this was something significant and important that I got bumped for. So unfortunately I wasn't able to do all the promotion I wanted to, but the book's reception was very positive, and we're building an audience, and it's still selling. And my hope is by the time the paperback comes out, it's built a very large initial audience, and the paperback usually you get 10 times as many people into the book. And then when the sequel comes out, you know, you sell them together, and you build and build, and hopefully there will be many more. So we will see. We'll see what happens.
Well, so that brings. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Drew. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, go for it, Morgan. I think.
Okay.
Drew, yeah.
I have a quick question, Ben. This puzzle, the bane of my existence, the most difficult thing in the world, so easy for some, but too much for me. Are you going to do another puzzle with the next book?
I would love to. So I have to tell you, I am the worst at puzzles, and even though I kind of knew where they were leading, I would not have been able to solve any one of the puzzles. And so credit to anybody who was able to figure it out. I loved it. I thought it was so cool. We'll definitely do this again, I think, or something like it. I mean, the reception was really cool. I'd love to do this, you know, on bigger and bigger scales. So we'll absolutely do something like this. I think this is a really interesting way to make books interactive, and I think we could even go farther with it.
It was absolutely a ton of fun. I'm being playful with saying it was the bane of my existence. I was terrible at it, but I actually made a lot of friends through the puzzle, so I really appreciated it, and I had such a good time.
I mean, that's awesome to hear. I love it. I love all the people doing it and getting involved with it. And And I like this whole book club thing. I like the idea of being able to talk to everybody, about the book as we go along. So it's very unique, and I think that we will be absolutely doing it with the next book for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody else has questions, like I said, I have a bunch that I can rattle off with Ben, but feel free to pop in at any time, Morgan's, particularly. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just was expecting myself to continue going through questions. But so Ben, going back to, you'd mentioned, getting bumped for all of the Russian, Ukraine situation, and we all know Once Upon a Time in Russia became a bestseller during that time period. Has there been any movement towards a studio picking that one up? I know.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. And by the way, I'm going into New York in 2 weeks to film with George Stephanopoulos for a documentary on the Russian oligarchs. So we're actually going to be doing something it's on Hulu. So I'll be their expert on Roman Abramovich and other oligarchs. So I'm going to be sitting down with him for a few hours, which is really cool. Yeah, so there was a lot of people calling, asking about the movie rights. Brian Koppelman, who does Billions Called, a bunch of other people. The issue with Once Upon a Time in Russia is twofold. Number one, the studios were scared to do it before, but I don't think they would be that scared now, especially with all the pressure Putin's under. So I do think a Netflix or someone like that would like to develop it. But the second and more pressing problem is Brett Ratner. So this is kind of a inside baseball kind of conversation, but when I wrote the book, Brett Ratner was attached to direct it. And back then, Brett was one of the biggest directors in Hollywood. He's the one who introduced me to the oligarchs. Unfortunately, or whatever, Brett's a pretty awful person who got caught up in the whole Me Too thing. Look, Brett and I got along great. He was wonderful to me, but apparently he had done some bad things that got him in a lot of trouble. Which means that no studio will work with him. So it's a tough situation in that the way Hollywood works is often when a very big director attaches to a project, those contracts are really binding. So any studio that wants to make that movie has to deal with Brett. And he is currently unwilling to take his name off of it. There's nothing to do with money, It's just he wants to resurrect his career, and one of the weapons he has is his attachment to this project. So his hope is that some studio will make the movie and make Brett Ratner a producer on it. But no studio wants to have a movie with Brett Ratner as a producer on it. So it's this really tough bind that the movie project is in, which we haven't quite figured out how to get around yet. And this is something that a lot of artists have dealt with the Me Too movement. When someone is Me Too'd, any project they're attached to gets killed. And there's hundreds of people who work on those projects. So there is that aspect of it that people don't talk about very much, but it is very tricky. So, I don't want to get into, difficult conversations about that stuff. As it's all super sensitive, but unfortunately, I don't know yet how we'll work around that issue.
Got it.
Yeah, the book gets tons of attention now. The UK just did a new print run of a few thousand copies. The American publisher reprinted it. The copies are just not in existence. Everything, you can't find that book anywhere. It's sold out everywhere. You can still get the ebook and the audiobook, but the paperback, the hardcover is selling for $100 on Amazon, which is completely insane. And the paperback completely, they told me last week there were 80 copies in existence that were not bought in the world, which is completely insane. Considering its first print run, there were a few 100,000 copies, so there's a lot. So anyways, they're reprinting it, but it is what it is. So I do think the book will continue to have life, whether we get the movie off the ground or not. It's still up in the air.
We'll have to talk to Buncho about getting you some Bitcoin Billy's gear to wear on the set for that filming that you're doing.
Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. That's only 2 weeks away though. We'd have to figure that out. I do want to start incorporating. I have to tell you guys, I know we're talking about Midnight Ride, but you guys have seen the Bitcoin Billy. Like, I think this is going to be a really big deal. I do. I think these are really going to be popular. They're much more like PFP than our rockets were, because they're really a face. And we've been talking about this, about how, there's Bitcoin maximalists who are against, NFTs, and then there are NFT people. This is a project that bridges that gap, because you're an ode to Bitcoin, but on the Ethereum network. So I feel like if we could get some of these Bitcoin maximalists to go into it, some of these Bitcoin celebrities to talk about this, I think this could be really cool. So I am going to do another round of podcasts and publicity, and I'm going to try and get my friends in the Bitcoin. So everyone read Bitcoin Billionaires. So those people are the ones I'm going to hit personally to see if I can get them involved in this in some way or another. But we'll see where it goes. But I do think it has the potential of being something really cool. And then there's the second aspect of it, which is it's a much more limited supply. I mean, there's only a few thousand wallets, but everyone's going to need one of those to have all three as we get closer to the movie. So if not now, as we get closer to the movie, those are going to become hot tickets, I think. So it's going to be neat. I think it has a real potential of being something beyond the rest of the project. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm excited.
Ben, I have another question for you. You just said they're going to be hot tickets. Are you letting us know that they're going to be tickets to a premiere?
That there will absolutely. So the next movie that's going to get made is Antisocial Network. I'm unable to announce our director yet. So what happened was we were going to announce our director last week, and then some of you might have read that Amazon bought MGM. So now MGM is officially owned by Amazon. So MGM is still making movies for theaters, but it's all under the umbrella of Amazon. So Amazon is going to decide now whether this is a theatrical release, a simultaneous release, or a streaming release, all of which are good for different reasons. But we're hoping it continues to be a theatrical release. The director who was signing on wants it to be a theatrical release. So the problem is all of the contracts have to be redone because now there's new ownership. So the movie is still, full board going forward. Our plan was to shoot this summer, Kim, which is very exciting. So if that, works out, I still have not read the screenplay, which I've heard is really good. People say it was the hottest screenplay running around Hollywood. It's going to go out to actors as soon as we sign the deal with the director officially. And I haven't had a conversation yet, Kim, about who's playing your character. I think like a Jennifer Lawrence would be really good. I think she's the right person for it. But there's a lot of young actresses now. I don't know everybody who's in the right age group or what age. I haven't read the screenplay yet, so I don't know where they put you necessarily. So I guess we'll see.
It's exciting.
Yeah, but that will hopefully all, as soon as the contracts get signed, then we go right into sort of casting situation. And then from casting, you start scouting locations and figuring out where you're going to film it. And then this summer it would film, and then release as soon as it can. I don't know. We wouldn't have a release date until filming and that kind of thing. So, but now it's under the umbrella of Amazon, so it just makes it a little bit more unknown about when we're going to actually start. But yes, once we have a movie, there will be premiere tickets available to people. I'm going to make sure we're going to do a big Boston premiere, red carpets. There'll be a New York premiere. There'll be an LA premiere. So hopefully we'll be able to get people to different premieres that are closer to where their homes are. Sure, there will be international premieres. So yeah, we'll figure that out. But I absolutely will be able to get premiere tickets and party tickets and things like that for sure. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ben. And I have another. Am I allowed to just keep asking questions? I feel like I'm really taking over the room right now. I apologize.
No, it's great. It's great. Absolutely. Drew gets tired, I can tell.
Okay, well, my next question is just listening to you speak about theatrical releases versus streaming and things like that. You've obviously had a very long, beautiful, lucrative career in this space, and now you're all the way into Web3. So my question is, what has been your favorite part through your entire career journey? What do you think is the most exciting part? You don't have to say Web3 just because we're in here together. I'd be curious if it's watching how Hollywood has changed, or if it is doing these NFT projects. Yeah, just what's been your favorite part?
I mean, listen, it's kind of every era in my career has had a different huge moment. And I've been very fortunate that I've been through a lot of these kind of different periods in time, I guess. I've been around for so long. I mean, when I first started out, I mean, there wasn't an internet, right? There weren't computers. It was so long ago. You were handing in, paper books to publishers, and you were going out to Hollywood talking about TV movies, and it was like a whole different era. And there was no such thing as streaming, and then streaming came along, and you know, I've had so many wonderful moments that have been amazing. Going back to my first book, Bringing Down the House, my first successful book, right? That was incredible and fun, and that was just really, the book was just exploding. And then the movie 21 was awesome. I mean, it was a big theatrical release, which, by the way, is back on Netflix in the top 10. It was last week, which is kind of incredible. A whole new generation got to have fun with that. But we did our premiere in Vegas. It was just totally nuts. We took over the Planet Hollywood, which had just opened, and that was an incredible experience. And then The Social Network was just out of the, it's just unworldly how crazy that was. It was the biggest movie in the world for a while, and I got to go to the Academy Awards, which were thankfully not as dramatic as this year's Academy Awards. How nuts is that? I did meet Will Smith at a party when The Social Network came out, and he literally was like, Ben, why don't you write a book for me? I'll star in one of your books. That's literally what he said at the time. And I was so excited because it was Will Smith, talking to me. And now I don't know what's happened to that guy. I feel like, boy, I mean, yeah, he's going through some stuff. Hopefully it'll all resolve. I'm sure it will be fine. But yeah, the Academy Awards was amazing and all of that stuff. And now, and then Bitcoin Billionaires, hanging out with the Winklevi twins. It's its own little, it was a weird world running around with all the crypto people and the Bitcoin people, and it was just an absolute blast getting to that. And then this is like, I feel like this is another phase in my career. And as Drew can tell you, I am like all in into this NFT world. I really feel like this is something that's going to be enormous, not just for me as a writer, but I think for like, Jordan, how do you know? It's my brother, not my dad. How do you know about Mez Light? My brother. I'll tell you about Mez Light in a second. That's funny. Yes, I am stealing from my brother. But you can't even get a Mez Light. Yeah, I what was I talking about? Yeah, the NFT world is I think going to be explosive, and I'm jumping in a big way. I know we're going to make some announcements next week about where this platform is going. We have some really big plans. I don't know if Adam's still on here or disappeared, but Adam is
yeah, I'm still here.
I don't know if you guys know who Adam is. Adam is literally one of the smartest people in Web3, who has a storied career at this point, who is our like guru, and we're very fortunate to have someone like Adam involved in what we're going to do. But I think the NFT is going to be a platform that's really going to make some major changes. It's going to be revolutionary, and we have some really big plans coming up that we're going to tease next week. But over the next year or so, I think I really foresee this becoming something, really big and fun, and hopefully lucrative for everybody who's involved. So it's going to be awesome. So I do have a big belief in where we're going with this, and I do see what's happening now in this space being another pivot in my career that I hope will be as fun as the last pivots. But I've got a lot coming up with movies and TV and stuff like that. Billions was a blast too. That was a great career highlight, spending a year being a writer on Billions and hanging out in New York with those people. It's just been thing after thing after thing. It's kind of very Forrest Gumpian, I guess, but I've fallen from one interesting innovation to another, and it's just been awesome. So yeah.
Hey Ben, I have a question. Not to totally change the subject back to Midnight Ride, but in thinking about I was lucky enough that you gave me one of those, what do you call them, early copies?
Advanced copies, ARCs, advanced reader copies, they're called. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So it's funny because I finished the book a while ago, and so I was just remembering at the end that there's a lot of loose ends that are exciting. I can't wait for the second book. Are you able to say is the Gardner heist going to play a role in the second book still? Because I know I'm dying to know what's going on with this family.
So I have been thinking about that now, whether I want the Gardner heist to continue into the next story. And I hadn't really figured out how yet. Probably not, but not necessarily not. I'm considering that option. I've got a lot going on in the next story, and there's a lot of plot twists that involve a lot of new things. I don't really know the answer to that question yet. I don't think I was conceiving it as being part of the next book, but it's always possible. You know, one of the tricky things with writing a sequel is that you don't know how many new people are going to be coming to it. So when you tread back to stuff that was in the first book, there's a lot of exposition you have to use to re-explain things. So it's a really tough line to walk, where you don't want to have to re-explain things, because most of your readers are people who've already read the first book, but a good portion are still people who've never read any of it, right? So it's a little tricky. You want the book not necessarily to stand alone, but someone could just pick up that book and still enjoy it. It's a hard thing to do, I will say. And I look back to some of the great book series or books that I like, and, you know, like Da Vinci Code, does he really succeed in having them be standalone? I think some of them are standalone really well, and some of them aren't as standalone. And so, yeah, it's
Right, because tell me if maybe I'm forgetting something, because we do, hopefully this isn't too much of a spoiler alert, but we do at the end of the book kind of get a sense of why the finial, is that what you call it, was stolen. And I'm guessing it relates to the family, but the family's
that will be in the next book. I'm going to explain the family's relationship to that theft. Yes. And if some of you haven't seen my interviews recently, that is related to a true story, where I got a call in the middle of the night from a guy who claimed to have robbed the Gardner Museum, and told me enough during the conversation like 20 years ago that I believed him. And he told me who had ordered the theft. And it's a real person, very wealthy, who died before the paintings could be delivered. And that's why the paintings ended up in limbo, because they had these famous things they couldn't sell because they're too famous to sell, but they didn't get paid for them because the person who was going to buy them died. So the family is actually based on this real family, that you know is very famous and wired into the world. The sort of people.
Oh, good. So there. Okay, so I'm dying.
I will have seen
I'll
and scenes out, you know, in their world. And Mr. Arthur is not the centerpiece of that family. He's just a liaison to the person who's going to be the main character in that family. Yes, that's going to be in there. So I will explain the Gardner theft in the second book.
Gotcha. Oh, that's exciting. Okay.
Yeah, I think it will be exciting. Hopefully they won't actually crack the Gardner theft before I explain it. So we'll see.
That would be a rewrite. I feel like Zach Lindwell character, the Art Crimes FBI agent, I feel like he needs to be chasing like the Vermeer to be around that, or are you gonna have like another way for him to be involved in whatever they're in, or is he like?
Yeah, I'm thinking about him going rogue, because he's seen enough now to intrigue him that there's something much bigger going on beyond stolen art, and because of his background, he can actually be pretty key to figuring some stuff out in the second book. So yeah, he's going to be there, but I think he's somewhat gone rogue from where he's supposed to be, which cuts him off from some of the access that he had. But I think it's an interesting way to put him into the story. So yeah, he will still be there, but he's seen enough now, you know, in that last scene in the Constitution that he's not going to just walk away from this, I don't think. So yeah, I think that. But that's good point.
I'll take another question if I can. I'm curious. You talked about like why you can't, or why Once Upon a Time in Russia might not be able to become a movie anytime soon.
It'll get made. It's not that it's not going to get made. It's so Peter Morgan, who writes The Crown. I don't know if you watched The Crown. He's an amazing writer who wrote Frost Nixon. So he approached us a while back. He's in love with that book, and he wants to write it as a play for Broadway, originally for the English theaters and then Broadway, which would be a great way to do it. And then you backdoor into a big Netflix movie because he has a big deal with Netflix. So it's not that it's not going to get done. It's just not as easy as going to a studio and a studio buying the rights, which is normally how it works. It's like, you know, Peter Morgan will figure out the Brett Ratner thing. You know, he'll get some sort of producer credit low down on the thing, but it'll be a Peter Morgan movie, and that's the way it could get made. Brian Koppelman and those guys at Billions, you know, I was like, Brian, listen, if you can just, you know, deal with Brett, you absolutely could make this as a movie. It would be fantastic. And they're like, well, we'll talk to Brett. But it's not as simple as, you know, once they talk to him, they'll find out he's just like, I'm never going to give this up kind of thing. So I don't know.
Would you ever take something like that and decide to put it, like make it or like fund it in like a more
well, that is another option.
Wild Web3 kind of way.
I absolutely could do that. That's a great question. I think that Brett's name would still have to be attached somewhere, but maybe Web3 doesn't care so much about that, right? I mean, I don't think people listen. I bet you could do a movie with Kevin Spacey right now, and it would be very successful because there's just millions of people who don't give a crap about what Kevin did because he was such a good actor. So I do think you could probably pull that off. I want to do something like that. I'm not sure Once Upon a Time in Russia would be the project I would choose, only because it's tricky. You're going to upset Russia, which right now doesn't really matter. It's delicate, I guess the word is, with oligarchs and stuff like that. Yeah, I've thought about that. I have a couple other books that I think might be better to do that way. Ugly Americans, Rig, Sex on the Moon is one that I would love to make that I think could be made and do very well. Yeah, Once Upon a Time in Russia, it's a great news story. So yeah, you could do a fund around it. And I have been approached by people recently who wanted to do that, do a DAO for that. Right? I got an email about someone to do that. I'm not against it. I just think there will be problems going forward. I don't think it's as simple as just raising money. A lot of the projects that are happening in Web3 right now are raising money without a great game plan what to do with the money. And I feel like people are doing it over and over again. It's not like they're trying to do rug pulls, but if you haven't thought through the other part, that's what's going to happen, right? So I would do Once Upon a Time in Russia that way if I really felt there was a great game plan to make it. I don't like these projects that just come gather money from people and then do what with it? And then say, okay, well, now let's figure out what to do with it. I just don't think that's a great approach, right? So if someone came to me with a great game plan for Once Upon a Time in Russia, I could see doing it that way. But yeah. I think there are other projects that have less issues that are easier to make. I mean, I think you could make Ugly Americans on a fairly small budget and be very successful with it. Once Upon a Time in Russia, you could make, but I just think you would run into some things down the line with distribution and stuff.
Ben, I have a question again. Catherine loves seeing the bourbon, by the way. I don't know what your actual name is, but it says Catherine, so I'm going to go with that. Nice bourbon. But Ben, I do have another question.
And it's Writer's Tears is the whiskey, and it's,
oh yeah, I have a bottle of Writer's Tears actually in the other room. That's good stuff.
Just for you.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yes, I do have a bottle of that. Yeah.
That's amazing. A question for you. So with the Midnight Ride, you got the community involved through the puzzle, which has been phenomenal. And the puzzle kind of caused me to go back and reread the book, which was quite enjoyable. It definitely reminded me of a National Treasure type of movie, which I love those. That said, moving forward as community members, what can we do to help your space more? What are you looking for from us to contribute?
Oh, that's a great question. And Thank you for that question. It's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, the community has been wonderful so far. I think there's a couple ways to look at that. You know, there's the book side of it. So books like Midnight Ride really find their footing through people enjoying it and telling their friends and getting book clubs and things like that. Like that's how books build, really. And so I'm hoping that the people who enjoyed this process really, you know, continue with this story, and are excited about the next book, and really, you know, hopefully it grows from project to project. So that's one thing. In terms of the space and what we're doing, you know, I love that people are talking about it, that people are using these things for the PFPs. I think I really want the Bitcoin Billy one to be a next step. I really feel like when we launch that next week, even though it's really only going to be secondary market for anybody to be able to get it, I feel like that imagery could be really representative of us going forward, in a big way. You know, I do think we're going to reach out to other communities more. I love what we've been doing with all the different communities, which has been really, really cool. And I think we're going to do more of that. Yeah, I mean, I think people have been great, and it's been such a positive thing, and every conversation has been positive. Anyone, you know, there's never been anything negative posted about it, which is phenomenal. Everything has been super, super upbeat and positive. And I think if we continue forward, it's just going to grow and grow and grow like that. So yeah, I don't know if there's any specifics, Drew, that you can think of that I'm missing. Yeah, I mean, that's always great. I think, right. Yeah, that's great. And that's going to be, you know, as of the next few months progress, we're hopefully going to meet more and more, you know, people in the space who are doing really big things, and get involved with them. And that's going to be a big part of it. Yeah.
No,
Hey
that's a great
Ben,
point. I really appreciate that. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to finish up and actually share that your NFT specifically has really helped me spread the message of NFTs because of the way it works. People, for some reason, can understand the concept of being a part of a screenplay. So also just thank you for what you're doing, because earlier you were talking about people just trying to raise money and not knowing where they're going. If you
Right.
don't know where you're going, you don't know where you're going to end up. So I just really appreciate that you guys have such a well thought out plan as well.
Thank
But
you. Yeah, I love that. I really wanted to be there, as someone that you could point to in the NFT space, saying, yeah, there's a lot of scams and there's a lot of garbage and there's a lot of people we don't know who they are. Like, you know who I am. I'm out there. I wanted to be authentic and not have people have to wonder what the project was all about, because I think that's what this space needs more and more of. Real, authentic people doing things in the space that you can point to and simply explain what it is. You know, we're going to write a movie and the NFT community is going to own part of the movie. And so there's a real world value to it. But also the community itself knows that we're really trying to do something. There's no secrets here, right? We're very open about our process and we're very accessible. And I don't want to see the NFT space become celebrities popping in, dropping something to make money off the community and then never being a part of it again. Like, that's something that I think would be a bad thing for the community going forward. Not just celebrities, but brands also, right? Like a brand trying to just sell something to you. Like, that's not what the space should be. But it could easily go that direction to some extent. And so how Hollywood moves into it is going to be very interesting to see. And hopefully they'll figure out how to do it correctly. But yeah.
Hey Ben, I have a question. I'm a big fan. Thanks for everything that you're doing.
Oh,
In
thank
fact,
you.
I think you were the catalyst to get my wife to talk to me about NFTs.
That's good. That's
So
good.
got her to get the book, and she's involved. So love it. Question for you though. You see Snoop Dogg coming out and selling his songs as an NFT. You see Time Magazine that released the first magazine as an NFT.
Really cool.
Do you see any of this going in the direction for, let's say, publishing and writing books where you actually launch a book as an NFT?
Absolutely. We've been talking about this, and I talked to Neil Strauss. I did a space with him, and I know he's pushing the boundaries in that respect too. I absolutely do. And one of the projects that I think we're going to talk about, announce next week, is an attempt to sort of do something with a book with me and an NFT community. Now, there's two ways to look at it. To publish a book as an NFT, you know, the way Snoop and music and stuff, is one way to look at it. And the other way is to have a relationship between an NFT and a book that still ends up in bookstores. And I think that's two different angles, I guess, a way of doing it. I do think we will reach a point where you could do an NFT, either chapters or do a whole book. I mean, you can do that, right? That's a way to go. I don't know. I don't know yet how, you know, looking at this next year, what we're going to do. Looking into the future, I definitely see that. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think that songs probably are easier just because from the technology standpoint, but also from who these artists are and how they drop things and stuff. It's much more of a natural, easy thing than a whole book or something. But I don't know. Drew, what do you think from the technological side of it? Yeah, I've seen that a lot. That's neat. Yeah. Right. 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 So one of the things we're talking about, what I'd really love to see if I had a dream here, is that our Discord becomes 50,000, 60,000 people. Because once you have a pool like that, you really could publish a book to that community and have it be, you know, a sizable book in terms of how books go. And then you launch new authors on the site, right? Which is something we're going to talk about next week. I don't want to let too many cats out of the bag, but we're going to use this as a platform for established authors and for people who want to write books. I think that there's a place here for anybody to have a shot because the community is going to decide, right? The community, if it likes something and wants to support something, is going to choose that thing. And so I feel like this takes it way farther than what Amazon Kindle can do, for instance. Anybody can self-publish a book on Kindle, but it's very different when you have 10,000 or 20,000 incentivized people who decide they want to see an author succeed because they like what they're doing. And so I do think that the possibilities here are really incredible. So yeah, I do really think that that's something that we're definitely gonna see. Yeah, I would love to. You know, I've spent a lot of my career talking to writers or people who want to break into writing and trying to figure out, you know, how do you do it? What's the best way? How do you help people who maybe didn't have the opportunities or it's hard, right? It's hard to make it in these creative fields. And I think it would be awesome if we were a space where that could happen. So I'm hoping that that works. But yeah, I do think the technology is getting to the point where you really could, if you wanted to, get rid of the publishing side, right? You could. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to have these billion-dollar companies in New York selling paper books any more than it makes sense for people to use paper money anymore. None of that really makes sense anymore. But on the other hand, I do love books and I love bookstores and I love libraries. So I wouldn't want that to ever go away. So I would never want Web3 to succeed to the point where that stuff went away. Maybe I'm like the people who love vinyl, right? I don't want it to go away. I want it to be part of it. Oh yeah, the Brandon Sanderson thing. That I'm reading on that. I mean, it's amazing what Brandon Sanderson did. I have like 10 Brandon Sanderson books literally right here on my desk. I love Brandon Sanderson, but he raised just an immense amount of money with a Kickstarter program and to do a series of books. And I think what that shows is when you have a community that really loves, you know, a certain book or a certain type of art, it's unbelievable. But I would like to see that happen for people who aren't Brandon Sanderson and Stephen King. That would be really cool. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Anybody else got any more questions as we?
Awesome. Well, if anybody else has any last questions, we're more than happy to get in here. But otherwise, we're approaching the bottom of the hour here. So, Ben, This has been great. This has been really fun.
Awesome. I really love that you all read the book and got into it. And I'm gonna eventually have the cover for the second book, not too far from now. So I definitely will be showing you the cover before we get to the actual book. So you'll get to see that first. Yeah, next week should be an exciting week with the Bitcoin Billion. I hope everybody kind of, enjoys theirs. I think a lot of you will have it. I assume most of you or all of you probably have the rocket, so you'll all get one. And then hopefully there will be you'll see them all over the place on Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot, so if you're all on Twitter, I know most of you are. You can retweet it. And the Mezlite. So my younger brother is a transplant surgeon, and he has invented a light. It's a sterile adjustable light for surgeons called the Mezlite. So I have the Mezlite. So apparently in surgery, they have a real problem with lighting, and surgeons have horrible backs because they use either headlights or they use really bad overhead lights and they can't see what they're doing. So he invented this it's basically like one of those desk lamps used to have that twisty, bendy, but it's sterile, and now they're using them in lots of different surgical centers. So yeah, that's Josh's invention. He's not, he doesn't understand NFTs, but he's transplanting kidneys. So I'm trying to get him more into NFTs, but he's not quite made the move yet. But so that is what the Mezlite is. Yeah.
Ben, before, I don't know if anybody has a question, so feel free to just knock me down. But I just actually wanted to say thank you. I think I've listened to almost all of your Twitter spaces, Drew and Bunch, friends with them. They're great guys. I love the team you have around you, and just appreciate all you've been doing in this space and moving it forward. And also, you come from an exceptionally unimpressive family, apparently.
I'm the black sheep of the family. My younger brother is a transplant surgeon who has liver, kidney in Madison, Wisconsin, and my older brother is a professor and radiologist at Yale. So the two of them are doing quite well in their own, just doctors. Yeah, I'm the one who sits around and just writes. So yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. You guys are amazing, and I do have a wonderful team around me. It's just been very fortunate for me. I mean, Adam was the first person who reached out to me out of the blue on Twitter. I didn't know who was talking to me, and then we sort of he was like, "You should be doing something in NFTs, man." And I had already been thinking about NFTs, but he kind of like galvanized it for me, and I was very fortunate that it wasn't some scammer, right? No, it was someone who really knew what he was talking about. And then Bunchu and Drew. I mean, I'm just amazing people. And Gia, we have an amazing team. That I think everyone in the NFT space is jealous of. So I really hope that with Bitcoin Billion, with our third drop and the movie, that we can really become one of the big voices. I know we're still small compared to some of the really big voices out there, but we do have pretty impressive reach, and we do get talked about in a lot of places. I know people talk about us all over the place. So I feel like over the next year, we could really become one of the big platforms in the space. And your support is really what does it, all of you people, and just keep on, just keep doing what you're doing. And I hope you keep enjoying what we're doing. And please do reach out to me on Discord or Twitter and give me ideas. Tell me things that you're thinking about. If you've got some ideas, throw them at me. I love hearing them and learning from the people. I mean, I think just even calling it Bitcoin Billy came from someone random on the Discord, right? I think that a lot of this has come so organically. It's just been incredible. And I think there's so much power in that. We're seeing that with GameStop. There's so much power in the community. And if we can become one of those communities, we can change a lot of things. Right, Adam? Kim is a celebrity for sure, and going to be a bigger celebrity. I know most people don't know who you are, Kim. A lot of people read the Antisocial Network and don't realize that you're on our team. You're one of the rocket holders and someone who's been on the Discord a lot, which is really, really awesome. And And I hope they cast a really great person as you in the movie, and I hope we'll definitely see you at the premiere.
Oh, absolutely, that'd be fun.
Yeah. Are you in the hospital? Are you working right now? You are.
I am. I'm at work right now, so I like took my lunch break and did those 30 minutes, and I had to come upstairs and
Fantastic.
another little break.
You do wonderful things. You're helping people right now. You're like my brothers. You're out there helping actual people. So it's phenomenal to see you. But thank you. Appreciate it. All right. And everybody, if there's no more questions, I guess we'll reconvene the next time. Drew, I guess we have tomorrow. I'm doing a Twitter Spaces.
Yep, we have a Twitter Spaces at noon, and so we'll have Ben. We'll be live for that. I've posted that in the announcements. So,
Yeah, please come if you have any more questions you haven't asked tonight. Come to the Twitter Spaces tomorrow. That should be a fun crowd. And then I've been getting more podcast and Spaces requests. We have another Twitter Spaces next week, right?
I think it's the week after now.
Week
I think
after.
that's the one that got pushed. But we will be you will see Ben everywhere through the month of April and then into May as we wrap up the the roadmap 1.0.
Right. And I'm going to hope to be at NFT NYC in June. If any of you are going to that, I'm hoping to be speaking at that. I don't know yet if I am, but I asked to be. So we'll see. And continuing forward, yeah. So thank you all very much. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.